Hello everyone, it's Carrie, and in today's video I'm working on the second addition to my Tattered Fairies line. At the time I'm recording this video, the style is still available in my Etsy shop, and the link to the shop is in the description box below if you're interested. Today I'm using a GiGi Grant doll from Monster High. It's been a while since I've customized a GiGi, so I was really excited to do something different. Since I was making this Tattered Fairy line, I wanted to make sure that all the fairies had more of an innocent, fun, whimsical look, and GiGi's lips looked a little too grown up. So I cut them down a bit, and while I was at it I decided to cut down and sand the eyelid area so I could make her eyes super big. So I did all this using an X-Acto knife, a nail file, and various grits of sandpaper. I finished with the super fine grit sandpaper, and then a few coats of Mr. Super Clear so I could make sure that it was extra smooth, but with a tooth, so it'll help with the colored pencils later. I was having trouble sanding around the eyes, so what I did here is I had this little wooden toothpick holder and I rolled up the sandpaper over it, so it really helped me make that sandpaper into almost like a nail file. So for the hair, I wanted a soft pink to go with her dress, so I used some alpaca yarn. I unraveled it and rooted her up. When she was rooted, I used a dog brush to thin out the hair because I knew I was going to give her some little braids later. After finishing the rooting, I rooted all the holes in the head, and so I do a part down the middle since I know that this is where I wanted to part the hair later. And from there, I'll fill in all the spots where I can see her scalp. I want it extra thick there. I was poking myself a lot with the rooting needle, so I started using this little rubber sort of thimble thing from Mod Podge, and it's really helped out in all of the damage to my cuticles. So then I take some little rubber bands so I can save the part that I made, so I don't have to go back and find it later, and I wrap her hair up for customizing. So like I said, I used several coats of Mr. Super Clear, probably more than usual, because I wanted to make sure that even though I did sand it down with the fine grit the best I could, it wasn't as smooth as just starting from a fresh factory doll. So the Mr. Super Clear kind of covers up any issues there. And then I start in with the shape of the eyes, making them extra big, take advantage of the fact that I just chopped up her eyes. So I started in with the white, and then I outline the lid with the black, and then start to lay in the waterline. Now I'm doing some shading on the upper lid, around the nose, and around the lips and chin. Using some Pan Pastel colorless blender there just to make sure it's extra blended. Then I'm also going back with some white Pan Pastel on the nose and brow line just to give some highlight. I did a custom mix of some pink and white and maybe some peach colors, to make the perfect natural lip. And that's what I'm using on her lips. I wanted to give her a little bit of a quirky look, so I turned up her smile a little bit with some black on the corners. I also softened the bow of her lip a little bit, trying to gain as much innocence with the look as I can. Now I'm using some Faber Castell watercolor pencils for giving some definition to the lips that I did with pan pastels. Also using a Derwent watercolor pencil to darken the corners with red, crimson red color. And to add a little bit of lines and lowlights and highlights there. Accentuating Gigi's cute little dimple chin. Since she has the light pink hair, I'm going to attempt to do some light pink eyebrows. I thought they ended up a little more white, but they tend, when the whole look is together, it actually matches the pink in the hair quite well. It's so hard to gain symmetry between each eyebrow. Using my trusty Wet n Wild eyebrow or eyeshadow brush, adding some blush. For the blush, I use a little bit of the pink pearlescent pan pastels and a little bit of my pink custom mix that I used on her lips. And I always blend it out with the colorless blender. Now onto the irises. I decided to go with some tan colors to match the tattered look of the outfit that she'll be wearing. So I'm using various shades of brown. And blending them out with white. looking at her at this stage really reminds me that it takes a lot of layers and and a lot of time and shading and detail before she looks the way I want her. So if you're attempting to customize yourself and are getting frustrated, just know you really have to spend the time to make sure you have all the details right. And the more shading and the more little details you add, the better it looks. So I always seal before I start on the eyelashes because I almost always have to erase one of the eyelashes that I made too long or too fat or something. And in doing that, I tend to erase the blush if I haven't sealed it. So I always make sure before I do the eyelashes that I take it outside for the final, for another layer of Mr. Super Clear. And then the eyelashes are usually the last thing. But here I was using some colorless blender as sort of a way to prevent the shading that I'm doing at the top of the eyes getting in the cracks of her corners of her eye. So I can wipe that away later and she doesn't have any like fallout like in makeup. And then, like I said, the eyelashes are usually the last part before I start to do the shading in the eyes, then the highlights. Oh, I'll finish off the ears. I always like to do my ears. And then I'll add the couple of layers of Liquitex High Gloss Varnish for the eyes. And on this doll, I left the lips matte. So onto the costume. I'm choosing from a package of shorts and corsets that I pre-made for this line of dolls, and I'm pulling out the pink set. I'm trying it on her for fitting and just to kind of imagine what I want the outfit to look like. These are usually the base for a lot of the dolls that I do. So it looks fine by itself, but I want to do some embellishment to the costume. So I'm going to add a collar to the corset, and then I'll make a skirt. I went into the skirt construction a little bit more on one of my recent videos of the collab video, so I'm not going to go into the detail of how I constructed that on this one. So I recently bought this pack of bead needles, and they work really well for making tiny doll clothes, especially with vinyl, because the small needle doesn't cause like a big hole in the fabric or vinyl. So it helps it not fray so easily, or like I said, cause a big hole in the vinyl. I also picked up this beeswax for my thread. I've been loving adding wax to my thread lately. It really helps with not getting tangled. So for the collar, I'm using some of this vintage lace, and I'm going to gather it up and then attach it around the top of the corset. And onto the skirt, I'm using some of these little sort of strips of fabric that I hand dyed in some pink colors, and then also this stretchy lace for the base of the skirt. So I take this base of the skirt and then I just add all the embellishments, and it takes hours and hours to make this skirt, but it's just so fun. So I'm choosing from these pre-made wings. I made a large selection of wings for my fairy collection, and I'm just going through them to try to figure out which one goes best with the embellishments that I used on this skirt. And while I'm going through those, I'll just note that on the skirt I used several different kinds of laces, both vintage and new, lots of sample fabrics and little lace samples, little collages of different kinds of fabrics and textiles. Also added some beading and little bells and charms. So when I chose the wings I wanted to use, I felt like I wanted it to blend a little bit better with the overall look. So I took some pink thread and doubled it up and just did some stitching around some of the embellishments that I did on the wings already, just for a more cohesive look. So now for her hair. Luckily, she's still in the little pigtails that I put her in earlier, so her part is saved, and I can just start to put together her pigtails. So I want her pigtails to be braided, but I want them to be sort of moldable. So when I braid them pretty tight, I can kind of move them around and make them kind of bend. And you'll see in the final look what I mean. And this way she can have that whimsical look I wanted for the whole fairy line. So I'm using this just generic sort of just gel, and this kind of helps hold the shape without adding too much stickiness or product, or make the hair look like it has a lot of product in it. It just helps it hold its shape and smooth down the flyaways a little bit. And I'm using a wide tooth comb to comb it out. And I keep some of the gel on my hands just to kind of smooth it out throughout the hair. And I start to section it off so I can start the braiding. And this video makes it look like I did it so fast, but that braid took a really long time. Oh, I forgot, I was actually trying a different kind of style, but I ended up going with the braids, the pigtail braids. So I think this is French braids. I can't remember which is which. When you go, I think I was going over, and I can't remember the difference between over and under, what they're called, but this one I braided over. And then I braided all the way down to nearly the end, and I didn't want to put any rubber bands or bows at the end, so I decided to just tie a little knot. And then I wanted some little flyaways in the front, so I trimmed up some of sort of a bang, a long bang, so they can be like little flyaways. So I hope you liked this video and the overall look. If you liked it, I'd love it if you gave it a thumbs up or subscribe if you haven't already. Thank you so much for watching. I hope everybody has a great day. Also, let me know in the comment section below if you have any questions, and I'll be happy to answer whatever I can. Have a great day. Bye.